Thanks for coming out tonight, supporting your local independent bookstore. Before we start, if you can check to make sure that your cell phones are off, just so we don't have any interruptions during the readings tonight, it'd be great.
Is your mic on?
Yeah, can you a little closer? How's that? Is that better? Anybody? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
okay,
a little.
Great, thank you.
Could be a little bit higher.
Okay. And you may have to adjust as you come up to readings.
Right.
So. My name is Monica Golden, and I will be helping to host this evening's event. Book Passage is honored to welcome author, blogger, and poet Dean Rader and his book, 99 Poems for 99%, an anthology of poetry. Rader has been widely published in the fields of poetry, American Indian studies, and popular culture. His debut collection of poems, entitled Works and Days, won several honors, including the 2010 T.S. Eliot Prize. Rader reviews poetry regularly for the Huffington Post and the San Francisco Chronicle. He is the co-author of the best-selling textbook on writing and popular culture, The World is a Text, which just went into its 4th edition. He is also a professor of English at the University of San Francisco. Tonight, Rader will be joined by a series of guest readers. Please give a warm welcome to Dean Rader.
So I really think of this as our book. The book that everyone is here to read from is a collection of poetry, 99 Poems for the 99%, which began as a blog. During the height of the recession, I was very interested in the relationship between poetry and the actual world, and if poetry could sort of speak to the concerns and needs of America and regular people. I always had this fear as a poet that poets are really only writing for other poets, this kind of exclusive and not always inclusive group. And I was curious if poetry, if its aims were directed outward and not inward, could be more inclusive, and if it could sort of talk about social and political and cultural issues. So I started this blog and got some very famous poets to contribute, and just a wide variety of people to contribute as well. And then my friend Jonathan Silverman proposed the idea of turning the blog into an actual printed book, which is here before you. And the book, as we were talking about just a little bit ago, did very well when it was first published. It hit #1 on the small press distribution bestseller list for poetry. We held readings around the country, several in the Bay Area, New York, Boston, Washington, and now we're doing one here at the famous Corte Madera Book Passage for National Poetry Month. And so I invited several readers from the Bay Area, an extended Bay Area. We've got readers as far away from Fairfield and Lodi here tonight to read their poem from the anthology, and if they want to read another poem from the anthology, they can, or maybe they will read some of their own work. I thought that we would, if there's time at the end, we will be happy to answer questions. I'm happy to talk more about the project, how it came about, what its aims might be, but really what I would like to do is put the spotlight on the individual contributors and readers. There are programs that you can read about each individual poet so that I don't need to keep coming up and introduce them. So what we'll do is we will each poet will go in alphabetical order by last name. And we'll begin with the illustrious poet Katie Capello, who's come all the way from Lodi. Katie.
Dean is a lot taller than me. Hi everyone, it's great to meet fellow poets in this anthology. I just wanted to talk a little bit about my poem before I started reading it. It's one of those that started with the title as opposed to an idea or thought which is very rare for me anyways. The mummy tube comes from the paint that was started being made in the 17th and 18th century, where people actually would grind up mummies in order to make this very specific type of brown. And I heard about it when I was preteen, teenager, and I became fascinated with the idea. Having grown up in the desert, I grew up literally on the very northern edge of Phoenix, Arizona, surrounded by brown and surrounded by, a very dangerous environment. So I explore those ideas in this poem, as well as the idea of what happens to people on the edge. The mummy tube. Summers, heat sneaking past the levelers in streams of dust. Sandy washes we'd force our bike tires through. You can't drink a cactus, the ranger warned us, a coral snake wrapped around her arm. But we imagined green pulp pressed to a chapped tongue as we squeezed Sir Isaac Lime up his plastic tube. Or another wetness, a purple swollen river carrying away months of dirt. News reports included shots of homeless evacuating the riverbed. Or not. What did we care? We had popsicles in our freezer and soles like rubber, and I always won our how far barefoot on asphalt game. A similar satisfaction, cracking a saguaro rib in half, counting the bullet holes in each arm. We kept a tally of dead things in the desert: fox, snake, coyote, coyote nose, things that were not us. Cicada jackets crushed to a fineness, the way they made mummies into paint. The ranger said, ground, wrappings and all. We three-fingered it, silvery brown on our brown cheeks. War paint, you called it. Camouflage, I said. We were survivors. We threw prickly pears like bombs. When Dean told us that we could read something else of our own work, I immediately thought of a series of poems that I wrote about New Orleans, which I lived in New Orleans for a time in my early 20s, and moved away before Hurricane Katrina. And there, again, I was living on the edge, incredibly poor, but still very aware that I was not as poor as some. I wrote a series of poems, I called them laments. I found this really strange, very ancient poem on the internet of all places, called The Lament for Urim, which was written for an ancient Sumerian town that had also been devastated by a flood. And so I took that as my cue to lament New Orleans, as it was also struggling with its own devastating flood. So I'll just read the opening of this series. It's called Lament for White Lions. Each poem has a little piece from the ancient Sumerian lament, so I'll read that first. Bough has abandoned Irakug and has let the breezes haunt her sheepfold. She has abandoned her flooded chamber and has let the breezes haunt her sheepfold. The protective goddess of the holy house has abandoned it and has let the breezes haunt her sheepfold. White lions, you are not mine. You were once, but I sped up past you in the mist. That machine to force hard ground from swamp, that 10-foot spider leg, I'd wake up with the feel of it across my face. scuttle, drag. Gunshots in the morning, before coffee, before the quiet love of the couple upstairs, reluctant to wake the baby. I smiled round-cheeked at the flat hand of water. Even then, everything was dead. The woman running in a red bathing suit, termites crawling down my shirt, between my breasts. A brown cloud against the streetlight forced from the ground. Was I stuck, dying in the new spring night? A mouth closed over my head, funereal air between their wings. I abandoned you. I can do nothing here but watch the waterline rise to your curled paw. You have time for one more?
Yes.
Okay. Now I would like to read from the anthology again. One of our fellow writers in the writing group with Dean and I, that's how I learned about this project. Her name is Christina Olson, and the poem is Dear Buffalo in the anthology. And I have a special love for this poem, not just because she's a writer friend, but also my father's originally from Buffalo, so I know what she's talking about. Dear Buffalo, by Christina Olson. Sorry about the brain drain thing. My father said if I came back home, he would shoot me. He was kidding, mostly. Dear Buffalo, it's November in Georgia, and today I sunburned. Every time I spray the roaches, I think, still beat shoveling. How is your abandoned Seneca casino, your rusting hulks? Buffalo, I admire your persistence. I couldn't hack it. I fled. First to Minnesota, colder but clean. Then to Michigan, your cousin across the lake. All my students' fathers were home in Barca-loungers, or down in Birmingham, working steel. The money's not much better, but at least it's there. In Michigan, everybody was angry and cold. Dear Buffalo, at least you're used to this sting, ice fringing the lake in early May. It's been what now, 30, 40 years? Long time. Let me get the next round. Molson, not Labatt's, right? Buffalo, when I drive downtown, I blow through your reds. Out-of-state plates plus a white face, I'd rather take the ticket. At least there's a cop to pull me over. Flint, you know, they're turning off all the lights. Dear Buffalo, there's places where the sun shines in March, don't you know? You like the fall down here, when someone pulls the lid off the sky and it's blue for days. People are fat and poor, but the stores are hiring, and you get used to the accent. Dear Buffalo, say hello to my mother for me, the neighbors who are still there, the houses a little worse for the wear. I know you're going nowhere. I see you waiting at the window to see if the mailman has anything good to say, if today brings a letter from those who left. Thank you.
I'm David Nelson Fox, and this was inspired by a post on Daily Kos about how the 1% were really rubbing our noses in it after the news came out about all the bankers' bonuses and whatnot. It's called Him, the Rubbing of Noses. Let's make the business cycle more harrowing. You and your skin in the game. Boom busting out all over your work clothes. Excesses of your pension and your puny union too. Staining. The news crawl demands you misunderstand macroeconomics. in the 4 seconds allotted besotted opinion, and it does not like modern art or this poem, or the smarty pants expert not educated by, oh, that was my fraternity too. Get a job, hippie. We had you at the laugher curve. Our job is you suffer our uncertainty, risk we inflict distinct from risk we risk, and you're damned lucky God didn't put you on the euro. We have our money, and we have your money, and pepper spray. Wipe that stupid look into your face. That was the one that appeared in the anthology. And this is called Looking Up at Citigroup's Ticker. Launder this idea, the preposterous versus the post-prosperous, putting the capital investment to work, an extra 10% off with your rewards card. Give the vice presidents a reason to leap from pent-up demand, market focus on free fall high yield, not on the scale of a $100 billion company. They don't lose their own money or jump, curiously looking down on the unwashed life savings. We are the weather they almost notice between the doorman and the town car, setting us on fire like Arab Spring gasoline human meat. They are leaving behind nothing but cave painting, trash talk, a rival gang. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming today. My name is Jose Luis Gutierrez, and Promise of Erasure is my piece in the anthology. But I'm going to start with a poem called Fire Sermon. I've learned to speak Molotov for the shatter of everything we know and hold habitual in our knowing. The night fires mark foreclosed acres for miles, attracting a congress of moths. Profligacy, too, requires a brand of devotion. Yesterday, I sided with the bankers. After our tidal consumption of Glenlivet, steak dinners, orgies, and cocaine, we ended up tap dancing straight from the SEC to the ICU. We now leverage mortgages against corn and haggle with weather to fill our coffers. Meanwhile, the debt ceiling bottle rockets to outer space. The experts soothsay a fiscal cliff looms. Never argue with experts. Their list of credentials is often long enough to stun an elephant. Tonight, the sky is dressed in artificial light. It's the 4th of July. Soon we'll all be covered in a Buddhist monk's windblown ashes. This next piece is toward a version of utopia. When the night sky was shorn of its stars, an epidemic of hope fell over the town. The cutlery lost its homicidal edge. Denizens hung their old coats of wariness to dry. Smiles gave up the ghosts of their rictus equivalents. Owls sought out the company of house cats to root out the mice. The old forgot their sagging bodies to the sport of seduction. The church harpist discovered electricity and stunned the congregation into paroxysms of song. Astronomers claimed as the sun was a star, it would be next to go. A group A group of satirical opticians followed suit, claiming sunglasses should be worn during night hours to preempt this from happening. On the third week, the moon disappeared. Then a week later, the sun is predicted. Soon, there would be peace. And this is the poem in the anthology, Promise of Erasure. Marcel Marceau had it over us. Maybe toward a life lived in gestures is also a way. This foraging for fuel and grub is old hat and not good for the planet. I prefer inaction for all its slippery ideations, like a rain-streaked window pane's sodium-lit version of a meteor shower. To stand outside the common fold, master the tentative argot of the seasons, and devise a strategy for miming clouds in their transitory flare. The heart's provisional inspires good gab, the seeds for congressional bills. The algorithms of reversed origami, a mapping of creases, is how star clusters can collapse into a plane without the aid of dark forces. This is especially helpful when studying hedge funds, which bear no resemblance to hedgehogs. Beyond the numinous we breathe water and drown the starlings of air, their purpose no longer flight but falling, as we're all falling. Here the common fund accrues like dew on summer lawns, dabs the driveway in pink and lilac blooms. We dance on snowflakes and yield to something greater than ourselves. Thank you.
Here's just a joke.
So was the pratfall. Two poems, the first from the anthology and then a second one. Hey ho, let's go. For the heroes who occupied San Francisco's Union Square and Financial District in September of 2011. The word is that folk are on the move. The sound of it reached me like an echo, and the smell like a smoky incense of solidarity. And the old memories play like movies in my mind. It was all play then. We were children. I suppose that nobody knows what difference the marches and demonstrations really make in the end. We grow out of them, don't we? I did but didn't forget. I don't forget the child I was in rural Mississippi, 1968, when we marched to integrate the bus station and my brother had that shotgun held to his face. It was scary, of course it was, but thrilling too, and we knew what injustice was and how to cry no. And dare I say it was fun. Not just bread and circuses, but fun, as in fundamental. Later, there were the terrible deaths. I was only 14, but I knew I loved Bobby. And I knew something in me was dying. When he died and I cried and didn't know why. Then the marches came. I wanted so to be a part of history and of meaning, to not be left out or behind. Some boys had dreams of being Marines. I dreamed of revolution and solidarity, and so I marched. This was no dream. We marched and chanted in the streets. We were many, and stardust and golden, and there was music, and it was childhood and sweetness and love, the future and a warmth that no family I knew had ever given, no classroom, no government. Until the dream, as dreams do, became nightmare. But there was one brief, shining moment. I was 15 and it was new and it was life and first love and coming out and getting high and getting religion and forgetting religion and getting the forbidden and transcending the forbidden and running away and finding myself. And it wasn't just me, it was all of us. We nearly swung out of orbit, didn't we? Nearly. We beat the gravity of the time. We nearly beat it. Then, nothing. And a long silence. And vague discomforts. And the sometime hint of renewal. Until now. Wow. The folk are on the move. They are out there. It's in the air. Somewhere out there, someone 15 years old is running to find some beautiful people somewhere to believe in and a hope to awaken to. And I'm in like Flynn. Let's wipe the sleep from our eyes. Get rid of this goddamn disguise. Get wise and arise. Hey, ho, let's go. A Dream About America on the night George McGovern died, October 21st, 2012. In the Hotel Americana, guests and servants scurry like rats with no sense of direction. In the attic hides a killer. Call him Andrew J. Sad and muscular, sexy, naked, and mad. Holed up for years, nursing fears and conjuring campaigns. I'm trapped in an elevator with a regal woman. We are carried up to a manifest date with destiny, to a cavernous room full of ancient plumbing, moaning and dripping rusty fluids. The air dense with humidity, so steamy that it's hard to see. The madman stalks us. Call him Papa George and Son. Call him Teddy Bear, Tricky Dick, Ronnie or Barack. Creeping from behind, he places his warrior's hands squarely on the woman's head. Fingers crawling like jungle infantry through her crowning thicket of hair, conquering the slope of her forehead to explore her eye sockets with surgical fingers, pushing delicately into the skull until she is blind. Hear her eagle screech. He lugs her to a window and tosses her out. In my dream, I am lounging by the pool of this luxury hotel, and from the heights falls a woman with blind sockets for eyes, splashing into the water like the plopping bodies of tumbling towers. The next morning, I hear the news. George McGovern has passed in the night. And I ache over something gone terribly wrong for much too long.
Hi everybody, I'm honored to be in the anthology. My name is Roy Mash. I'm going to begin with a poem by somebody else in the anthology before I do mine, because this poem had a particular resonance for me. It's by Edward Hirsch, and it's called The Lottery. A little background to this: during the Vietnam War, the draft was universal, not like today where it's voluntary, but there was a big loophole: the student deferment. You know, you went to college and you basically got deferred, and hopefully the war would be at an end. And clearly I'm of the same age as Edward Hirsch, because in the very late 60s, early 70s, they did away with the student deferment, and they instituted a lottery. You pulled a number and you assigned it to a birthday. If you had that birthday, you had that number, and that was the order in which you were going to be drafted. You couldn't get out of it for just being in college. You had to do other things, maybe. And so there were a number of results from this. Class distinctions were removed. You know, if you didn't go to college or you were poor, it didn't matter. But there was increased domestic opposition to the war as well, especially on campuses. Really ginned it up. And also there was that one night when they did the lottery that determined the course of the life of so many people, myself included. So this is the background to the lottery. I could have been in this room with him. I was at Ann Arbor as it happened. The lottery. Hundreds of us pressed tightly together in the south lounge of the Forum to watch the lottery on a giant TV screen. We were stuck in the heart of the country. But in Washington, the men in sober suits stood together on the bright stage and faced the rolling cameras for the invocation blessing our country, which would be a blessing to the world, and the roll call of birth dates. The mood among our motley seemed, and this was perfect for mine as well, festive and fearful, seething, curious. The selection? A random sequence of blue capsules mixed in a shoebox and pulled out of a glass bowl. September 14th was the first date, pasted onto an enormous white board with 365 more empty slots. April 14th, the lucky second. Someone muttered, "I'm fucked." Someone lit a joint as at a concert, and the girl next to me began to sob for her high school boyfriend in Cedar Falls, whose birthday was December 30th. History existed only in textbooks, but it arrived for us on December 1st, 1969, with the selective service system. Those blue plastic capsules opened, and people drifted away when their days were called to call their parents, or get drunk, or pack for Saskatchewan. Where was it anyway? Or muse over the randomness of dying in Vietnam. Wonderful poem. So the poem I have in the book is called Press Conference. This is a night of content, clearly, and political content, but something has to be said about the form here. This is a minimal sonnet. Just like a sonnet, you get your 14 lines, you got a sonnet rhyme scheme, in this case like A-B-A-B, so on and so forth. But in the minimal sonnet, you only get one word per line. So that restriction, it kind of makes the haiku seem like War and Peace. It's amazing that, you know, anything, let alone a political content, can come out of 14 words in this rhyme scheme. Oh, and also there's, not to get too T.S. Eliot on you, but there is a footnote attached to this poem, and it's the French phrase, l'état c'est moi. So just to make things interesting, I have $2 here for somebody who can tell me both what l'état c'est moi means and who said it. Anybody? I could raise it to 5. L'état c'est moi. I know you know because I told you at one time. Go ahead. Nobody else knows it. Go. Oh, yeah.
It means the state is myself.
Yeah. And do we know who said it? That's the
I
second part.
believe it must have been Louis XIV.
Absolutely. The crap. Louis the 14th. Not only that, you get another $1 for 14. rather than Louis the 14th. You know, it could be I am the state, or I like the little, not quite as much English, but I think it gets more of the sense of it. The state is me. L'état, c'est moi. So here's the poem, the minimal sonnet. Press conference. Press conference. Actually, I factually lie. But so what? No WMD? Nay. Bah. Reality. C'est moi. And here's another little shorty. For some reason, these minimal sonnets come out, they have some political content. This is called Proclamation. You know, Dick Cheney said that waterboarding, it's just a little tip. So this is Proclamation. All future torture shall feel fresher, cheerier, lyrical. Each eyeball will hatch pure pleasure. And one more poem. So you only get those 14 words. So this poem is called The Worst Way to Go. This is, from a childhood game that, as far as I could tell, was restricted only to boys. I've never met a girl who played The Worst Way to Go. But it seems to me to have a kind of political or moral content to it, only in retrospect, in the sense that it built a kind of an empathy. I don't know if you'll agree, we'll see. The worst way to go. A perennial boyhood debate. Of course, it wasn't any good if you didn't imagine it happening to you. Burned alive. Buried alive. Eaten alive. It was important to put in the part about being alive. Hanging, drawing, and quartering didn't seem so bad until someone explained the details. Then there was quicksand, forced to breathe in goop in the dark alone. Companions standing around the smooth surface, alive. In Tarzan, they would string upside down some poor native sap to the tips of two tall trees, bent to the ground for the purpose of making a wishbone of him. The scream came off camera. It was pretty quick, and you would think, not so bad. But it could give you the willies. For the rules said it had to be you strapped up there. You spraddled. You wriggling. You waiting for the snap.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gordon Smith, and I'd like to give you a little preview of how I got into poetry, if you don't mind. I went to a small private school up in Oregon called Linfield College, and they wanted me for football. And I had this Caucasian English professor by the name of Mary Ellen Gleason. And I used to turn my English papers in, and they used to come back like a crime scene, you know, red all over the place. I think she started giving me D's because she got tired of giving me F's. Well, Mary Ellen Gleason was also married with 2 children, and she told me at the end of the fall semester, my freshman year, she told me that, you know, I was gonna flunk out if I didn't pass the spring semester. So she said that she was gonna take away from her family and tutor me. So she tutored me and got me through the spring semester. And after she got to know me a little bit better, she told me that I had a unique and funny outlook on life, and she thought I would be a great poet. And I looked at her, because I'm 18, I looked at her and I'm like, poetry? Like roses are red, violets are blue? And she said, Gordon, poetry isn't just rhyming, it's putting your thoughts on paper and making it flow. So she said, look, I want you to write me 3 poems. And I looked at her, I said, what's going on, Professor Gleason? You trying to make me lose my little C in your class by writing these 3 poems? And she told, and so I wrote 3 poems. I can't remember exactly what I wrote about, but back then, 18, I probably wrote about Muhammad Ali, Jesse Owens, and Major League Baseball or something. Well, I submitted the 3 poems to her, and she corrected them. And I probably would have got a D on those too. But she corrected them and entered them into a poetry contest that I wasn't aware of. And I won a $500 scholarship. And, you know, and she just told me, look, you know, she ended up leaving at the end of that year. And I had never told anybody about it, that I had won that scholarship, because I was from the Oakland Bay area and I was playing football and poetry didn't fit in the game. So I never even told my mother, and she passed in '99. So, you know, I didn't write, you know, I put poetry not on the back burner. It was in the refrigerator with mold on it. You know, I didn't write another poem until 2007 is when I wrote the first poem. And I was, my freshman year of college was 78, 79. So I just started writing in 2007. But I was glad that Dean invited me to write a poem for this book. It's a good opportunity for me, and I wanted to take advantage of it. Let me put my glasses on, because they say your sight is the second thing that leave you. Please start getting on. The poem I wrote was titled, Must Be Done, Must Be Won. Struggling, starving, homeless. Is this your idea of a great nation? Is this your idea of freedom? Is this your idea of loving one another? If Wall Street must be occupied, then so be it. If it must be done, it must be won. If it must be won, then it must be done. They call us the 99%ers. We call them the 1%ers. That is all they are worth. 1% of the nation getting everything, 99% getting the scraps, the leftovers, the bones with no meat. Is this what you call a new world order? Think again. If Wall Street must be occupied, then so be it. If it must be done, it must be won. And if it must be won, then it must be done. It was the 1%ers that created this mess. It will be the 99%ers that will correct the test. Shutting down the streets, shutting down the big companies, whatever it takes to stop the segregation, the modern day slavery, to stop the lynching of our pocketbooks, to end the turmoil in our country. If Wall Street must be occupied, then so be it. If the fight must be done, then the fight must be won. If the fight must be won, then the fight must be done. So just win, baby. Just win. Now, I would like to read something from my own book, Poeticize Your Mind by G. Smith. Just a couple short poems. The first poem I would like to read is called Shining Shit. Okay? When I was young, my father used to always say, no matter how hard you try, Gordon, you can't shine shit. You know? If a person got a bad spirit at the beginning, most likely they're going to have a bad spirit in the end. And that's what shining shit is about. This cannot be done, no matter how hard one tries. It is an impossible task. You wonder what is meant by these words. One spirit is what meant by these words. A spirit can be rubbed like a genie's lamp. It could be scrubbed like a dirty tub. It could be dressed in a tuxedo, wrapped in a limousine. If one spirit is tarnished, rusted, or just plain old rotten, they can be rich, motivated, educated, and sophisticated, gender excluded. But if one spirit is so full of shit that their eyes are brown, this could be known as a wolf in sheep's clothing. A thief is a thief, a liar is a liar, and a piece of shit is a piece of shit. Beware, they lurk everywhere. Beware. All right, I would like to read one more poem to you out of my book. We'll go with the next poem on the list, which is Misery. This is something that no one deserves, but it's something that some people accept, attract, and foster in their lives. It is hard to imagine why someone would accept this feeling lurking around them day after day. Some receive this in their lives from the twisting and turning of God's green, blue, and brown revolving earth. Some make decisions in life that causes them to receive exactly what they are seeking and usually end up with failed dreams. There are some who wear it like a badge of honor. It precedes them when entering a room. It announced their interest, like at a royal dance. It engulfed them like a tsunami. They stand proud, shoulders back, chest out, back straight, eyes forward, like the few, the proud. That is exactly what they are, the few. Smile.
Thank you to Dean for asking me to contribute to this amazing project. And thank you so much to all the other readers tonight. Wow. My name is Haya Swanheiser, and I will not ask you to spell that. And I want to preface the first poem that I'm going to read, which is the one from the book, by saying that on September 24th, 2011, I was laid off from my 8.5-year job as a journalist. And on September 27th, 2011, I was at Occupy San Francisco, wondering what to do. And I wound up sort of producing what I came to call the Occupy San Francisco Art and Performance Series. That was kind of a joke about how formal it was going to be. But I wanted to make it
I wanted to expand the culture and the voice of protest. And so I was down there a lot, and I loved it. So I want to make sure it doesn't sound like I kind of hated it, because I didn't. So this poem is called "Is My Distaste for Drum Circles Stronger Than My Love of Justice?" I certainly refuse to dignify those kids with the name hippie. Sherman Alexie, I think about you these cold nights at the camp. Dreadlocked, dead-eyed kids, entitled, arrogant, disgusting, lying, stealing, nearly ruin it for some of us. And I think Sherman Alexie always does such magic describing awkwardness. Ruby is 19, she goes to state, and she was my intern back when I had a job. She wears bright, fashionable lipstick and pretty boots. I can't get anyone from school to come over here, she tells me. They think it's just a bunch of Grendels, which I guess it is. I think hard and make a limited peace with the gross children in the cult. They're in survival mode. Of course they took Kyle's sleeping bag. What's more, it's Occupy, and they're the literal occupiers. I don't want to do it. But if they weren't there, maybe I would be sleeping in front of the bank. Still have not figured this part out. Top of the lungs. Are you too good to talk to us? Want us to move aside so you can scrape us off the bottom of your shoe? They hope I'll be flustered, but I'm busy and repel all street-side panic bait. I don't even talk to clipboards. Sherman Alexie probably does. He probably likes it. It's fucking awkward. Eventually, I know the Occupy camp can be no better and no worse than humanity. I'll read one other poem, and these are, you will have experienced my entire output as a poet once you've heard this. I wasn't a poet until Dean asked me to be one, and that's just how much of a wizard he is. And when I told Facebook that I was going to read that poem at the reading on Hate Street that we got to do, a friend of mine said, "Oh, you should do one poem for the 1%." So I did. And I just want to thank my friend John Graham for making that joke. I say to the people who are poverty-stricken, you are better off going where the price of living is not so great. A mayor of San Francisco. Where the streets are more dangerous, where the water might be poisoned or off, where the sidewalk ends. Where the school funnels to prison, where you are outsiders at best, where they don't speak your language, where, if you are old, the numbers say you die soon. Won't get! My brother was having an argument with an economist once. The economist kept saying, I realize it's sad that economic forces create displacement, but that's the way an economy works. Economies create winners and losers. He said it as if the problem were that we had failed to understand the way an economy works. Maybe you've heard them too, trolling their little hearts out. You need to take Econ 101, moron. My brother, whom I had not known was a philosopher, said, and here I want to speak into the people's microphone. Mic check.
Mic check.
Mic check.
Mic check.
We don't live in an economy.
We don't live in an economy.
We live in a society.
We live in a society.
It feels dumb to be writing poems about this in the Ferguson world.
It feels dumb to be writing poems like this in the Ferguson world.
But we don't live in an intellect.
But we don't live in an intellect.
We live in a body.
We live in a body.
Thank you so much.
That was great. We have a little bit of time for a question or two if anyone has questions for any of the authors. Or we could just commence to drinking. David says yes. Yeah. Well, I want to thank everyone for coming out. I want to thank the authors for coming out to the reading, especially those of you who traveled such a long way. I want to thank Monica for being a lovely host, and I want to thank all the great people at Book Passage. Support your local independent bookstores. Thanks to you all for coming out to the reading. Feel free to talk to the individual poets. There's books for sale, and I know that the bookstore will happily sell them to you if you would like to buy some. Thanks again, and happy National Poetry Month. Monica, anything you want to say?
No, we do have books at all the cash wraps, and thank you so much for coming out tonight. It was great having you all here. Have a good evening.